Probably about 5 months before Richard was at that point where he had to open up and get a kidney, we were having dinner at our house with Wanda and Richard, and Wanda turned to Richard and says, "Well, aren't you going to tell him?"
In October 2013, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease called vasculitis. And vasculitis will attack any of your major organs, but fortunately, it chose my kidneys. About 35 years ago, Neil and I met purely by accident, and I have come to believe that that was on God's will, because as we cultivated a friendship, then our friendship became stronger and stronger, and strong enough to where Neil would give me a kidney. Now, after surgery, post-operatively, the church supported me. James and Jan came by and visited me, and it was their visits that really strengthened my recovery. And without them, I think that I would have been sicker for a good bit longer. After I was diagnosed, I told Wanda, I said, "We're not going to tell anybody. Right now, this is my disease, and this is something that I have to work with."
We were having dinner at our house with Wanda and Richard, and Wanda turned to Richard and says, "Well, aren't you going to tell him?" And I said, "Tell him what?" Well, Richard had been going to the doctor and not really saying anything about his vasculitis. It was kind of a secret disease of his that was only known between him and Wanda. And he said that he was in the end-stage renal disease. At that point, I knew that Richard was going to have a kidney, and Richard knew it too. Where did God work? Well, I think the first thing God did is he raised my body temperature when Richard said he needed a kidney. It was unbelievable. This aura just started squeezing on me, and I said, that's got to be God. I'd only had that happen a couple of times in my life prior, and each time I thought, well, this is it. I've got to do something. So I definitely know that at the point when Richard said he needed a kidney, that I would probably match.
Well, I'm not one to be pitied. I did not want to walk down the halls of the church and everybody look at me and say, "He needs a kidney, he's sick. Look at him, he's losing a lot of weight." Right now, the average lifespan of an individual on dialysis is 5 to 10 years. I was lucky. I never went on dialysis, so I never had to experience it. But I did experience, as Neil said, we lost a lot of weight. I was placed on a low potassium diet. I lost 40 pounds. But God gave me the strength to continue working every day. And the day before I got my kidney, I worked. And everybody looked at me and said, "Why are you working? Why aren't you at home?" I said, "Because I don't need to be at home. I am not sick. I can still work."
No good deed goes unpunished. I gave the kidney and went home. Richard was home, and we were all home. And I woke up in the middle of the night with Pepto-Bismol all over my stomach. So I said, well, I'll just throw some peroxide on this and let it ride until Monday. Went down there, and they said, "You've got MRSA." Well, God showed up with a drug called Zyvox. And that antibiotic is the nuclear reactor for MRSA. And I just said, this is just part of the deal. I never really once felt like I was going to have any overall symptoms or problems. But when that came about, I just said, okay, so I'm going to have a little longer recovery than Richard did. But God truly showed up through just saying, I know this is going to be okay. I know you've got it taken care of.
Well, I saw God at work a lot of ways, a lot of friendships, of course, with Neil and Anna Hook. But I did ask God to give me strength to endure this and to become a stronger person and survive this disease.
Well, you can see God at work in many ways in your life, but usually it's after the fact when it all just kind of comes together and you think, well, maybe that wasn't a coincidence. But like Richard said earlier, we met by accident. I was called upon by my company at a laboratory to go call on the 116th Tac Wing Hospital. Richard was the staff sergeant there in charge of all the paperwork and getting labs and things like that together. And we got together and started doing some business. And through the course of conversation, I said, well, what do you do? Where are your kids? And all that kind of stuff. And we live in the same community. We met that way. And that was about 1991. At that point, we started coaching soccer together. We started going to scouts together. We vacationed together. Richard was going to a different church at that time, so we weren't in church together. But I just really felt that God had prepared me almost 30 years prior to do something. And like I said, I had this feeling saying, hey, you are a match. This was the day that this all went down when Richard announced that he's going to need a kidney. I just said, well, okay, I'll get tested.
And that is the God's gift to me that I will always remember because of the friendship and the love that Anna and Neil had for Wanda and I. They were willing to do it.
No regrets. If I would encourage anybody that if you have not done so, to get on your driver's license, go online and donate organs in some form or fashion. I can assure you this: the next donor, if I'm a donor again, I'm a dead donor.